virtual fish tank, which is from the Scratch Programming for Teens, but now we're making it with Scratch 3.0. So there's a couple things going to be a little different. The backgrounds and the same sprites aren't in the new version, but you can still make essentially the same program. So let's get started. Once I've logged into Scratch, I'm going to create. And the first thing we need to do in here is add a backdrop. So I'm going to go down here, bottom right corner, and choose a backdrop. And they actually have a category for underwater. Now in the original instructions, there was actually an underwater 3, but they've just got underwater 1 and 2. I'm going to go with this sort of cartoonish underwater 1 and add that in. And then the next thing we need to do is add a couple sprites. So first thing, we don't need this cat sprite because cats don't really belong in a fish tank. Now, if you wanted to leave that in there, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the cat. And then we're going to go down here to choose sprite. And if we go to animals, that'll sort of narrow things down. Now, there used to be some other different sort of fish sprites, but if you notice here, this one fish sprite has a number of different fish costumes. So we're going to use that for a few of the fish. But we also need to add a starfish and an octopus. So I'm actually going to grab those first. So the starfish is still here pretty much the same with these two costumes. So I'm just going to add the starfish. That's our first fish. And in the textbook, it also suggests renaming some of the sprites. But I think just sort of leaving the starfish sprite as starfish is fine. When we get to the fish sprites, we'll do some of that. So let's go ahead and then add the octopus. So I'm going to go back to add a sprite and get an animal, and I'm going to add the octopus. Now there's a couple other things. Shark could be good in here. Jellyfish could be good in here. There's some different varieties there. And the octopus is a little different from what it used to be, but I'll go ahead and throw this in here. So we've got an octopus and a jellyfish. And then we're going to add 3 different fish. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back to add a sprite and grab animals. And I'm going to just grab the fish sprite. And then rather than going back in and adding 2 more of these, I'm going to right click here and duplicate, and then do that again. So now I have 3 different fish. And this is where it can be a good idea to rename them. So the first fish, let's leave that as the clownfish. And let's go ahead and rename it as clownfish. So I just clicked on the fish and then went to the name of the sprite and put a new name. And then for the next fish, I'm going to go ahead and let's do this blue costume. So I'll just call this blue fish. And then the last one, once again, this is on the costumes tab. And yeah, let's do this. I'm not sure what kind of fish this is, so we'll just call it striped. And this will help me to sort of differentiate and keep track of which fish is which, instead of just going with, oh, the first fish, the second fish, the third fish. Okay, there's going to be a little sound effect we're going to add, kind of a little bubble thing. So I usually, when I've got a sound effect that's just for the whole scene, I usually put that in the backdrops, and that's what the textbook suggested. So I'm going to click on backdrops. I'm going to go to sounds. We don't need the pop sounds. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to choose a sound. And this one should be called bubbles. Let's see. And if you can hear it, it's just a little bubbling, kind of like your sort of fish tank kind of bubble sound. So I'm going to add that in. And notice the sound's about 4 seconds. You've got a couple different ways you can play this. The book sort of suggests that, well, first of all, however you do it, you're going to want to have the sound going when the green flag is clicked, and then we're going to have this going as long as this program is running, so we grab a forever loop. And if you look at sound, there's two ways to play sound. There's one that says play sound until done. That's what I'm going to use. There's also one called start sound. That's actually what the book suggests. The way the book does it is it places the start sound in there and then goes back to control and gets a wait block and says wait 4 seconds, so that since it takes about 4 seconds to play, it'll play it every 4 seconds. But that's essentially what this other block does, so that's what I'm going to use here. So play sound bubbles until done. So now click the green flag and I get the bubble sound effect. Alright, so now we need to actually program our fish. Now each of the fish are just going to swim around the tank, and essentially they're just going to go from side to side. So when they hit one side of the tank, they're going to go to the other. Now I'm just going to set up sort of a basic version of this, but then and then at the end I'll sort of show you one way to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to start with the starfish. Starfish is going to move pretty slow. So all of these things are going to happen when the green flag is clicked, and we're going to have this sort of happen forever as long as this is running. And there's two blocks we need here. The first is we're going to have this guy move just one step, and the blocks sort of happen, you know, constantly, but there's a little bit of a delay. So basically, the smaller you make this, the slower it's going to move. And you can sort of see it just moves at a real slow pace. If I change this to a larger number, it would move faster. And notice that the starfish moved to the edge of the screen and then just sort of stopped there. So that's the other thing we want to do is there's a block that says if on edge bounce, and we're going to add that in here. I'm going to set the move back to 1. Let's get our starfish back on the screen here. And now you'll see when I start this and it moves, as soon as it hits the edge of the screen, it bounces and turns around. Now you'll also notice that the starfish flipped over, and that's not actually something we want. We want it to always be sort of right side up. So one thing you can do here is there's two ways to solve that problem, and I'll show you both ways. One is in the motion blocks down here at the bottom. There's this set rotation style, and we want it to be left-right. Okay, so I could just click on this, okay, and that should set his rotation style to left-right. The other way to do it is when I've got the sprite, I can click on the direction here, and this will allow me both to adjust his direction and the rotation styles are down here at the bottom. Normally they're set to this all around, which is why he flips over. But if you do left-right, that means he'll always be pointing either left or right, and he won't flip. So even if he's facing the other direction, he's gonna still be right side up. So once you do that, now if we play this, we'll see that starfish will bounce off the wall and come back the other way, right side up. Okay, the other fish, we're simply going to do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, except they're going to go at different speeds. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this block into each of the other animals. And so the way I do that is I'm going to drag the block. If I wanted to delete it, I just throw it over here. But I don't want to delete it. I want to copy it to something else. So I'm going to drag it over here and on top of whichever sprite I want. And so now it's copied it into the octopus. Okay? But it still is in the starfish. So it was a copy effect. So then I'm going to do the same thing for the clownfish, the bluefish, and my striped fish. So now each of these has this code. And then what we're going to do for them is the octopus, we're going to have the octopus move real slow, so just half a step. The clownfish will have to go a little bit faster. Bluefish will still have the same speed, and then the striped fish will have move a little bit faster as well. And then this can work if you set each of the fish at sort of a different level. And then the other thing you need to do for each of the fish is make sure you've got the rotation style correct. So I'm going to go to the striped fish, click here on left, right. Bluefish, once again, go to direction, left, right. Clownfish, same thing, and the octopus. And so now if I run this, each of them is sort of just moving at their own sort of pace around the fish tank. So what I like to do though is I like to have the fish sort of moving, not just straight left to right. So the way I do that is, and first of all, I'm just going to leave our starfish here on the bottom, just moving along the bottom, because he's a starfish, it wouldn't make sense for him to be sort of up and swimming. But then what I'm going to do is for each of the other fish, I'm going to go to their direction, I'm going to tilt them just a little bit. And because they're of the left-right rotation, they're not actually going to, it's not going to look like they're tilted, they're just going to start swimming in a slightly different direction. So I move the octopus just down, tilted it down a little bit. I'll go to the clownfish, sort of do the same thing. Bluefish, have this guy down like that. And the striped fish. I'll have this guy also sort of pointing down a little bit. And it doesn't have to be much. You could have it sort of tilted more, but I just like having just a subtle little amount of difference here. So now when I play this, you'll notice that they're sort of changing levels a little bit in where they are, sort of moving up or down. And if you want them to be moving up or down more, once again, you can change that angle, that direction to do that. And because they're pointing left to right, they're always going to look like they're just sort of swimming straight left to right, but you'll see that they're moving up and down a little bit as well too. Okay. And one of the other things you can do if you don't like sort of the way it looks, notice that the starfish is so big here. One thing I can do is if I go to looks, I can go down here and I can tell it this go to layer, and I can tell it to go to the back layer. Okay, and so now if the other fish come around him, he'll always sort of they'll be in front of him. And if there's any of the other fish that you'd rather have, I'd rather have the bluefish in front or in back, you can adjust those as well. But that is pretty much it for this program. So I'm going to give this a title, and then I'm going to go to the project page. I'm just going to say click the green flag and enjoy the fish tank. And in the notes here, I'll just mention this program is from Scratch 2.0 Programming for Teens by, what's his name, Jerry Lee Ford Jr. And once I'm done, I can go ahead and share this so that anyone can sort of enjoy the fish tank. So that's about it. That's our virtual fish tank and how to program that.